annual Northern Ireland Conference. Of course, as usual, we see things and we understand things differently. We don't buy into the cosmetic exercise that says all is well, that we should be grateful for the distance we have travelled, and that the two communities, so-called, concept to which we don't subscribe, are now running the executive. At a time when we are scrutinising our past as well as our present, this party, the Workers' Party, will be posing that really important question: what type of society do we want to live in? Unashamedly, we seek to shape that life to the benefit of working class people. That is why we see things differently. That is why we are different. Comrades and friends, let's start those discussions now. Let us make that difference through our different analysis and vision for Northern Ireland society. Let us demonstrate that difference. Let us deliver that alternative. I hope you enjoyed the conference. Thank you.
As has already been noted, the Good Friday Agreement was signed 15 years ago. You might have expected that today we'd be living in a very different Northern Ireland. Suspect devices and bomb scares should have been distant memories. Attacks on police officers and other workers should have been consigned to history. Sectarian confrontation and the fact that there are increasing numbers of bigger, higher peace walls ought to be unthinkable.
You would think so, but try driving down the M1 some morning, or taking the train to Dublin and back, or even working in the Alliance Party offices in the Newton Ards Road. Bombs, bomb scares, disruption, terrorism is very much still part of our lives. We now have even more peace walls than we did when the Good Friday Agreement was negotiated. We have even got a retractable fencing in East Belfast. Someday the Department of Justice probably thinks that's progress.
Unemployment is rising, opportunities are diminishing, daily living costs are soaring, and the quality of life for many thousands of people, both old and young, is declining.
How come the picture that's painted of Northern Ireland is so different from the reality? Who's spinning this and why?
When we all talked about the peace dividend, we were thinking about a better society, better conditions, more opportunities, housing, jobs and education. But the peace the speculators was looking for was a piece of the action, and the bigger the better. And who better to manage it all on their behalf than the two extreme fundamentalist parties, Sinn Féin and the DUP. Youth unemployment is at its highest level since the Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1998. Nearly 25% of under 25-year-olds are out of work. Northern Ireland also has the highest proportion of underpaid workers in the UK. 1 in 4 people here in Northern Ireland is earning a salary that fails to support a basic standard of living. Recent research by KPMG has found that Northern Ireland has the highest proportion of workers who are paid less than a living wage, 26%. That's a 2% rise on last year's figures. The executive is now being run exclusively by Sinn Féin and the DUP. There's not even a fully operating executive, never mind an opposition.
But despite what the Northern Ireland Office, the Executive and the media want us to believe, these are the realities in Northern Ireland today. These are the realities that we have to challenge. Thank you.
For the past few months, negotiations have been happening between the US and the EU on the formation of a huge intercontinental trade deal called the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP. This will fire the starting pistol on the creation of the largest free trade area in the world. According to the European Commission, it will make you and your family almost exactly €545 richer. This is based on the somewhat dubious assumption that the extra 119 billion a year it is suggested the deal would generate is shared equally amongst all of the families of the European Union. In conclusion, with comrades such as you here today, we will continue to agitate for an economy which serves society and not the other way around. Thank you for your time.
It's a total disgrace that the media have ignored this ISDS. and somebody's got to do something about it, and if nothing else, the party should produce documentation on and leaflets which could be distributed and at least start the argument.
And John has highlighted the fact that just as what Cameron and the Tories have been doing in terms of deregulating the economy, reducing the role of trade unions in terms of protecting workers' rights, what we're getting is unbridled free marketeering. We've heard today about the work practices. What are small businesses doing? Small business are the people who are responsible for low wages and poverty wages. As has been pointed out, they're getting their wage bill subsidised by the state. The reason so many people are paying tax credits is small businesses and some big ones, like some well-known names like Tesco's and Sainsbury's. They all pitch their wage structure at a level that they know that those workers can then go and claim working tax credits to top up their wages.
Just to congratulate John and all that he put into that, quite a lot in fact. But I was wanted to reiterate, believe it or not, what John Larry was going to say there, the living wage. I think this party should concentrate and zone in on that. And it's one that we could put mount a good fight on, and we could get a lot of different organisations with us on that. And I think that should be the plank that we should go forward on, the battle for a living wage for everyone.
I'm concerned with this new trade deal between Europe and the US, not only from an economic point, but from the democratic aspect, because more and more power will shift from those we elect to the hands of the huge conglomerates and multinationals, which means every aspect of our lives, our health, our education, will be in the hands of those who are not accountable to the electorate or who are not elected by us. And I think this party has to oppose this new trade deal and oppose it strenuously, and just let the citizens of the country know exactly what it will entail.
Of Rights is a long-standing policy of the Workers' Party over many years. It has its origins in the civil rights movement and the campaigns in the late 60s and early 70s for the democratisation and reform of the Northern Ireland state. A Bill of Rights is a mechanism to permit political life to flourish. In other words, we do not see a Bill of Rights being the preserve of one group or section of society only, but of all its citizens. It is an integral part of the building of a new political order. There is another important point that I would like to make. I have dealt so far with the political and civil rights. However, the Workers' Party does not view the scope and the contents of the Bill of Rights as being narrow or restrictive. We wish to see included in these Bill of Rights not only constitutional, political and civil rights, but cultural, economic, social rights as well. This is a matter of some importance to Northern Ireland today. We have heard elsewhere on the conference agenda of the erosion of the workers' rights and rights generally in the economic sphere. The world of work is moving increasingly to an unregulated place, where work practices are dictated by the means of profit, 0-hour working contracts, part-time work, loss of pension and holiday entitlements, the right to a job itself, to belong to a trade union, the right of unions to negotiate on behalf of the workers, and the right to access industrial tribunals and redress. All these rights are increasingly under attack. Northern Ireland today is increasingly a place not just populated by Protestants and Catholics, Unionists or Nationalists, but by increasing numbers of people who belong to neither. Ethnic minority rights, women's rights, the rights of the young and older people, all of those differing sexual orientation, all those rights must be protected and guaranteed as well.
And I think this is where the Bill of Rights was key. It was a key tool to enable some of these structures to work, this mandatory coalition to work. And what's happening at the minute really is that those parties don't have access to all of the frameworks, all of the tools that they were supposed to have in terms of delivering this system of governance. And for me, the Bill of Rights is key in doing that and making our governance more effective. And for four things in particular it would do. If we could maybe move to the next slide in terms of unlocking the potential of the agreement. I'll start. First of all, it would allow us to reflect upon their particular circumstances, the particular abuses of rights, of inequalities that helped start or fuel the conflict in the past, and would help build in protection to ensure that those abuses never happen again. So reflection on those particular circumstances. Secondly, it would let us develop a system of rights and safeguards for dealing with issues in a non-sectarian, non-political, non-partisan manner based on legal principles and those international human rights standards of the UN or EU level that we want to draw from. And I think that's something of might be of particular use for the process that we're facing at the minute, particularly in relation to flags and emblems and some of those more controversial issues. Thirdly, and I think this speaks to some of the elements that Gemma was pointing out in terms of the confidence building, it provides a system of common values. And I think that can't be underestimated enough. A sort of touchstone or a blueprint, if you will, for how governance is conducted in Northern Ireland. So what I mean by that is, in the one instance, it would check the actions of elected politicians and public authorities to make sure that they're actually acting within that framework of the Bill of Rights. But also, at the same time, it would actually allow them to be freed from the constraints of our sort of locally divided community politics by virtue of the fact that they do have agreed parameters to work within. So giving, I suppose, political parties the freedom to move beyond those common traditional narratives into a new space by virtue of the fact that they had to work within agreed parameters within the Bill of Rights. And finally, I think it allows for some common reference point between citizens and equality before the law, that the same sort of confidence that citizens around the world that have access to a Bill of Rights feel. In a divided society, this can be even greater, and it has even greater cohesive potential. A Bill of Rights can provide individuals and communities in Northern Ireland the security and the peace of mind that comes from knowing the exact guidelines and the exact restraints which power has been exercised through here at the minute. Thank you very much.
It's very obvious the failure of the mainstream parties in Northern Ireland to adopt the Bill of Rights is the main thing that stopped you. 15 years, 10 years, it's an absolute scandal that this has happened, and the public have not been outraged by it. But for me, it exposes the hypocrisy, primarily Sinn Féin's political commitment to rights and the hypocrisy of that position, and why that is not being exposed and challenged more. Essentially, it's a sectarian position, and it's rights for nationalists or it's rights for unionists. It's not rights for citizens, and that hypocrisy needs to be challenged and exposed far more than I think what it is.
I belong to an organisation that is linked to a union in England, which is historically it's criminal justice, and that has been completely destroyed and privatised to a company called Circle, and at the same time they can dismantle a trade union, similar to the tactics that we use with the miners. The new company now doesn't have to recognise trade union memberships. So to me, for them to turn around and say we promote and support a Bill of Rights would go against the economic policies that they are forcing upon our people here. That needs to be held up. I believe that it needs to be fought for. I believe we have the public behind us in that fight, and it's just raising the issue. The public need leadership from political parties and trade unions to make this, to push this forward.